So you have $5,000 and you want the fun, reliable, and cool Honda or Acura. Well, look no further because in this list, I have 11 of the greatest Hondas and Acuras available right now in today's market for $5,000 in good condition. And coming up in the number 11 spot, which is the worst of the best, is the Honda Civic Si 7th generation. This car, in my opinion, is really ugly, and I'm not saying that because it's a hatchback. I personally love hatchbacks. I'm saying it because it's just so weirdly proportioned. It looks like a hamburger, but if you put all the veggies on one side and then squish the other side, it's just got some of the weirdest proportions. Like, even by hatchback standards, I just think these are really ugly. However, they do have decent engines. They come with Honda's K20A3, which is the economy version of one of their best engines, the K20A2. And this car has 160 horsepower paired to a 6-speed manual, sending all the power to the front wheels. Not only are they practical, but they're extremely reliable and make very good daily drivers, and they're also good for building power if that's what you're into. Coming up in the number 10 spot, we have the 7th generation Honda Accord. In my opinion, this is one of the best looking Hondas I think I've ever seen. And I'm not saying that as a weird joke or anything either, I mean it. If you can get one of these as the 2-door variant specifically, with like a 5-speed manual and the V6, you have one of the best cars available for $5,000. These cars are absolutely amazing. You can get them as a coupe or a sedan, 5-speed manual, or I believe either a 5 or 4-speed automatic, and then either a 4-cylinder or a 6-cylinder. And either way, either configuration, these are amazing cars. Just be sure to get them with a manual because older Hondas with automatics, they're not unreliable, but they're also not the most reliable when compared to Honda's manuals, and they're not even nearly as fun. So if you get an Accord, get it with a manual, and you'll have a fun, big vehicle. And they have a lot of aftermarket support, so you can mod them. And the K24, which is what these cars have, is amazing for tuning. So is the V6, but honestly, if you want it just for building power, get the 4-cylinder. It's in every way possible better. And with all that aside, these are just really good cars. They're extremely reliable, and they're pretty fun to drive. So let's say you want a Honda Accord, but you want something with a little more luxury. And if that's what you want, get the Acura TL. These are pretty much Honda Accords with V6s and leather seats. They're great vehicles. They look really good. In my opinion, they look almost, if not better, as far as looks go, than Honda Accords. They're extremely reliable, great vehicles, tons of luxury features, and most importantly, they're reliable and they're cool. And as soon as someone sees it, they're like, oh, that's an Acura. That's cool. That means you're rich. That means you have money. Even though you can find these for like $3,000 with relatively low mileage, and you can get them with a manual or an automatic, and they're really good vehicles, extremely fun, and overall, great cars. Coming up in the number 8 spot is pretty much the opposite of the TL. It's really small. It's front-wheel drive. I mean, so is the TL. They have smaller engines, and overall, they're very, very tiny. It's a Honda Del Sol. These cars are so weird. They're like Civics, but like so tiny. But they're also really, really cool, and due to their lightweight, they're really good if you want to throw like a B-Series in them, slap a turbo on it, and there you go. You have a race car. And where they barely weigh anything, every number, like every little bit of horsepower that you can get out of the engine, you're gonna feel it. They handle amazing. They're literally front-wheel drive Miatas. They're great cars, and you can find them for right around $5,000. Although they are going up in price, so if you do want to get one, get them now. And honestly, they're not bad investments because people do really like these, and I can see them being worth quite a bit of money someday. And they're also extremely reliable. Parts are easy to get for them. The only thing is they are very, very, I shouldn't say they're that old, but they are pretty old compared to a lot of vehicles on this list. So obviously gaskets and things will start to go because as things get older, rubber deteriorates. But if you can look past that kind of thing, these are amazing vehicles. Moving on to another iconic Honda, or I guess in this case, Acura. It is the 3rd generation Integra. These are some of the most amazing Hondas ever built. And I know I've been saying that about every car on this list, but these are just so exceptional in every way. They're lightweight, available with either 2 or 4 doors. They look really, really good. They got 4 for, oh god, headlights. I couldn't even think of the words. I'm way too tired for this, but they come with 4 headlights, and they're really cool. And if you don't like that, you can swap them with the JDM front end, and then they look different. They look different. That's the word. Anyway, they're really good vehicles. They have a lot of tuning potential. These are really popular, especially for swapping in better B-Series engines. These come with, I believe, B18s. I'm not sure exactly which ones, but they're not the greatest engines. Not bad, but not the greatest. And with that in mind, I'd recommend getting one of these as more of a project car or a tuner, or just something you want to build as a show car and stance it out. Either way, they're great vehicles, great daily drivers, extremely reliable, and very cheap. And sticking with Acuras for a minute, we have the Acura RL. These cars are really uncommon. I mean, not many people even know about them, but they're essentially Acura TLs, but just bigger. They're like the Lexus LS of Acura. And overall, they're really good cars, very reliable. They're just not that common because not many of them were sold due to them being so expensive. But either way, they are really good vehicles, very reliable, and if you can find one, I'd highly recommend it because in my opinion, they're really beautiful cars. And if you restore it or even go for like an OEM Plus build, they look amazing. In my opinion, better than TLs, better than like really any Honda. Like I'd say this and like the 7th gen and 8th gen Accords, they're really tied for like the best looking, I guess, older Hondas. Amazing cars, very reliable, and also really good daily drivers. They're, like I said, pretty much the Lexus LS of Acuras, and they're just amazing luxury cars. Coming up in the number 5 spot, we have the first generation Honda CR-V. Despite not being a car and being heavy, and I mean not really being a sports vehicle in general other than being a sports utility vehicle, these SUVs are really cool in my opinion because you can get them with a manual transmission and they're really good looking, like especially for SUVs. I find that older SUVs aren't their best looking. I mean, if you look back to the 70s, yeah, they're really good looking, but around like the late 90s to early 2000s, SUVs just lost what made them truly special, and that's when they became so mainstream that every one of them looks the exact same. But the CR-V, in my opinion, it really sticks out as a good car. I mean, you can do so much with it. They stand out among a sea of random crossovers and SUVs. You can get these for really, really cheap, and you can do tons with them if you want to lift it and build an off-roader, you want to slam it and build a show car, you want to swap in a K-Series and turbo it, there you go. You can do anything with these, and they're extremely practical. In the number 4 spot, we have the Acura RSX. Of course, it's not going to be the Type S because nowadays those are so hard to find in like good condition. Obviously, you can find them like a decent Type S for around $4,500. But for a really, really good Type S, you're looking at around $7,000. However, you can still get the base model Acura RSX, and they're really good vehicles. They're not the best for tuning because they do have the K20A3, not the A2. But if you can look past that, these are still really good, fun little lightweight sport coupes. You can still do a ton with them, and if you do want a Type S swap it, it's not that difficult at all. They're really good vehicles, extremely reliable, tons of aftermarket support. And if you decide that you want to sell it and buy a Type S, you'll have no problem selling it because these vehicles are really sought after, and due to that, they will definitely appreciate in price. So even if you do get a base model, at some point they will be worth more than what you paid for them. And overall, they're just really good vehicles. I'd highly recommend getting one of these if you want a good little starter vehicle, and overall, great cars. And now we're moving into the top 3 cars, and in the number 3 spot, we have the 8th generation Honda Accord. Like the 7th generation, these cars are really beautiful. They're available as coupes, sedans. They come with either manuals or automatics, and they can also come with a 4-cylinder or a V6. And in my opinion, these are just 7th generation Accords, but in every way better. They're safer, more reliable, have more power. They're easier to work on, which is surprising because newer vehicles are generally harder, but they're not bad vehicles to work on. They're really fun to drive. They do weigh a little more, but they make up for, I can't speak, but they make up for that with the extra power, and they're just overall really good cars, easy to get parts for, and they look so much better and so much more modern. but still they maintain like a sort of presence that the 7th generation has, because while the 7th gen is old, they still have a really strong presence. And the 8th generation just carries that over so good. They're amazing cars, and I highly recommend getting one. And next up in the number 2 spot is a car that you probably weren't expecting at all. It's the Honda Fit. It's a fun, reliable little hatchback that makes next to no power, but it also weighs next to nothing. And in my opinion, they're just really good daily drivers. I wouldn't get one of these if you're looking for like an amazing driving experience, although they are pretty fun, but they're also pretty small and they're quite practical, so they're great daily drivers. And I do want to keep the Century short, but overall extremely reliable, and it's a great car if you just want to daily it and then have a project on the side. But finally, at the number 1 spot is the 8th generation Honda Civic Si. These cars, in my opinion, are amazing. They have great tuning potential. They look a little weird, like the proportions, especially on the 2-door models, are a little strange. And even on the 4-door, they're kind of awkward, but they're not ugly. It's just unique. And uniqueness is not a bad thing, especially with vehicles as these stand out, especially if they're modded. They have a lot of aftermarket support and tons of tuning potential. So if you want to build power or you just want to keep it stock and preserve it, there's so much that can be done with these cars. And for that reason, this is the number 1 vehicle on this list.